Good morning. My name is Jeff Ridlehoover, and I am an associate principal here at Wayzata High School. On behalf of the faculty and entire Wayzata High School learning community, I would like to welcome the family and friends of Dr. Frank Schiebe to the 2010 Wayzata High School Distinguished Alumni Ceremony. Wayzata High School began recognizing distinguished alumni in 1990. With the induction of Dr. Schiebe, we now have 24 graduates included in this very special group. We hope that you will take a few minutes following the ceremony to look at the distinguished alumni we have hanging in the hallway outside this room. They're the plaques, not the actual people. We have an impressive group of people who have left Wayzata High School and continued on to make great contributions to our society. The recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award is selected each year by our Student Council. I will now turn the program over to our Student Council President, Drew Donlin, who will tell you why the students selected Dr. Frank Schiebe to be posthumously recognized as the 2010 Distinguished Alumni Recipient.
Good morning. As Mr. Ridlehoover said, my name is Drew Donlin, and it is my honor and privilege to be speaking here this morning on behalf of the Wayzata High School Student Council. We as the Student Council chose Dr. Schiebe to be this year's Distinguished Alumni Award winner, not only because of his outstanding accomplishments, but for the ways that he has impacted our community and our country. Dr. Schiebe was a star student athlete at Wayzata High School. He was a starting back for the football team for 3 years and led the team to an undefeated season his senior year. He also won 3 consecutive state championships in wrestling, a rare feat in Minnesota sports. And he also won numerous track meets. Dr. Schiebe was a class officer his senior year and was recognized by fellow classmates and staff as one of the most popular students in school. Following graduation from Wayzata in 1952, he went on to earn his bachelor's degree in electronic and electrical engineering from the University of Minnesota while working an industrial job to pay for his tuition. Following graduation from the U of M, Dr. Schiebe served our country in the Naval Air Reserve for 8 years and completed his service as a first-class petty officer. After service in the Naval Reserve, Dr. Schiebe pursued higher education by receiving his master's and PhD from the U of M with a major in hydraulic engineering and a minor in aquatic biology. From 1957 to 1983, Dr. Schiebe conducted and directed research and development that led to major breakthroughs in a variety of scientific fields, while working for St. Anthony Falls Hydraulic Laboratory at the U of M and USDA laboratories at the University of Mississippi and Oklahoma State University. In 1983, he became the director of the Water Laboratory, and under his leadership, it was rated one of the top USDA laboratories in the country. He also led a separate large watershed research facility that was used by various government agencies, including the Department of Defense, NASA, the Department of Agriculture, and many more. In 1996, Dr. Schiebe left government service and went on to invent groundbreaking technology for measuring and applying solar radiation technology to agricultural systems, which led to improvements in crop yields and reduced environment load from agricultural runoff. We as the Student Council believe that Dr. Frank Schiebe embodied everything that a Wayzata High School student should strive to become. He was a standout student in high school and college. He was well-rounded. He honorably served his country and made magnificent contributions to the agricultural community through his inventions that influence our lives today. Today it is my pleasure to announce Dr. Frank Schiebe as the 2010 Wayzata High School Distinguished Alumni Award winner. Now Ms. Iverson will say a few words.
Good morning. My name is Sue Iverson, and I am the student council advisor at Wayzata High School. And typically, this part of the program, we have the person that nominated the recipient come up and say a few words about why the nomination was made. And Frank was nominated by Dick Anderson, a classmate and colleague, I even believe, at some points throughout the years. And unfortunately, Dick is not able to be here today. He lives out east, and his schedule did not allow him to be back here today. We are taping this ceremony for him today, so he will be receiving a copy of the ceremony. I have really enjoyed talking to Dick on the phone over the past few months, and I feel like I really have gotten to know who Frank was through our conversations. He's very proud of his friend, and he has sent me some words that he would like me to read as to why he nominated Dick for this award. Now, he told me that I had to read this with flair and color, and I'm not sure I can do Dick justice, but I am sure going to try. So this is from Dick Anderson. Frank and I have been friends since we first met in junior high school till he passed away recently. In high school, Frank was an outstanding athlete, a class leader and officer, and popular with everybody. He received an electrical engineering degree at the University of Minnesota, got married, had a large family, and worked at a laboratory in Minneapolis while continuing his academic studies, leading to doctor's degrees in biology and civil engineering before the environment craze. He went on to do research and development at various government laboratories and eventually moved up to leadership and management roles. Throughout his life, he continued to be a loving husband and father and was active in church, community, and political affairs. In summary, Frank was one of those very rare, all-around good guys that everyone dreams of having for a friend. However, that is not why I nominated him for this honor. Frank had a unique style of thinking, which led to major scientific breakthroughs that continue to make life better for all of us. How did his thinking differ? When faced with a new phenomena, Frank would spend a long time studying and thinking about it from various angles until he understood it in great depth. Combining his deep understanding of phenomena gained through years of study with his inherent creativity, he imagined and implemented totally new approaches to long-standing technical problems. Interesting enough, this is not the kind of thinking that does well in high school or the initial periods of college, where rote memory and speed are rewarded. Only in later years do basic ideas and understanding get more emphasis. Frank was, at best, a middling student in high school. His high school advisor told him he would certainly fail to do well in engineering at the university. He got C's in school and struggled his freshman year at the U, but got straight A's in graduate school. Think about it. It may be a good lesson for any of you students who feel doomed forever by a C grade. And that's the part where Dick called me and said, "Is that okay to say to the kids?" And I said, "It's perfectly fine." And I think that's a good message for the students to hear, is that high school isn't it. I mean, you can perform one way in high school, and then he certainly wanted you to get the idea that Frank left here and went on, and when he was able to pursue his passion, he thrived in that area. What specific contributions did Frank make? Let me cite just 3 examples. The movement of liquids and gases is very important in a technical society. It determines the performance and efficiency of cars, planes, electrical generators. The list is endless. The basic equations describing fluid motion have been known for over 100 years, but the equations were too complicated to solve exactly. To get any mathematical predictions of flow behavior in fluid machinery, engineers were forced to make simplifying assumptions, thus getting answers that were in error by an unknown amount. Frank thought he could solve the equations using the new technology, high-speed computers. To do so, he invented a software technique and applied it to shapes now called Schiebe bodies. They are used worldwide by scientists and engineers to develop, design, and build improved fluid machinery. And Dick also added there that he said, "Tell the students to Google Schiebe bodies, and they'll be surprised at how much comes up from a graduate of our high school," which was very impressive. Dams are built to control flooding, distribute spring runoff throughout the year, and generate electricity. Normally, the turbulent upstream river carries along sediment which drops to the bottom as the water slows when it enters the reservoir. The reservoir slowly silts up, shortening the useful life of the dam. Frank conducted a series of experiments to study how water flows in the river and through the reservoir. Then he used the data to design a flow redistribution system which greatly extended the usable life of dams. Satellites transmit a constant stream of pictures and data describing the Earth's surface. Frank was a pioneer in applying this data to down-to-earth problems. He believed that buried in the data streams, there must be information that would be of great value to farmers if they could only access it. He assembled a group of researchers from various government agencies and private corporations to compare satellite data with field observations of plant behavior under various conditions. Comparing the data sets from the satellites and field observations, he could isolate indicators showing when fields needed fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides, and moisture. He developed software to translate satellite signals into simple instructions a farmer could use while driving a tractor through his fields. He packaged the software with a satellite receiver and GPS and founded a company to manufacture and market these devices to farmers. Picture that. A farmer could now drive through his field knowing where he needs to water, feed, and spray without wasting time and money or damaging the environment with overuse of chemicals. Just 3 of Frank's many fundamental breakthroughs are cited above. The first was analytical. The second combined experiments with hardware development. And the last spanned the whole range of concept, organization, and administration, development, and commercialization. Frank was a true outlier with major contributions across whole fields of technology. And students, he wanted to make sure you understood that when he was referring to outlier, there's a book out there called Outliers. And I said that it is in some of the curriculums in some of our classes that maybe some of you had come across that book, Outliers. But the definition that they use of outliers in that book clearly defines Dr. Schiebe. And finally, Dick says, Frank reflects honor on Wayzata High School, just as he was always proud to say he was a Wayzata graduate. Thank you for naming him a distinguished graduate. So I'm sure it would have been a lot better with Dick here reading it himself, but I hope he'll be proud of how his words came across. And now we are going to turn the program over to Margaret Schiebe and your brother-in-law, yes, and is going to join her down here, and they have a few words to say as well.
I'll try to keep this short because I know the students want to get back to class. My family wishes to thank our invited guests, the school board, the principal, the teachers, all of you who have supported the Distinguished Alumni Award. We thank the council for choosing my husband to receive it. Reviewing the list of the people who have already received the award, it surprised me to note that I already knew 4 of them. Bill Koski and I worked together on some education problems back in the early 70s. Both Amy's, the class of 78, were sleepover guests of my daughter Jean. And Ken Lure and my husband, as they stated, were sparring partners. Considering that Kenny was the state champion, you know how well Frank taught him and wrestled with him so that he could be a good job. So anyhow, you've added Frank to the list, and I thank you. Listening to Miss Iverson read the letter from Dick, it was difficult to recognize Frank because he was mentioning all of the important scientific things that he did, and they were important. But I have some different points of view to tell you about, if I can find my place on the paper. They mentioned that his counselor at school didn't, in fact, he laughed when he said that he was going to go to the University of Minnesota. Mr. Anderson was the counselor at that time, and he says, you'll never make it. So Frank did make it, and he was confident in his abilities to the point that he tried out for the football team his first year at the university as a walk-on and succeeded to make the team in addition to all of the other classes he was taking. He suited up for one game and said, I don't think I do want to do this. I'll pass on this. But he was confident in his abilities, and you should be too. And maybe someday you can be a recipient of this award. Like I said, I would like to share some things about Frank that Dick didn't know. Do you remember when you were a student and the teacher said, "What does your daddy do?" They asked that of my son John, and he said, "My daddy sits at his desk and thinks until he can't think anymore, and then he goes in the basement and plays in the water." And the teacher said, "What?" Daddy worked at the St. Anthony Falls Hydraulic Laboratory, and part of the Mississippi River is diverted through the building, and they did go down in the basement and play in the water. They made scale models of rivers and dams and things like that. And so when they were playing in the water, they really were working. They designed dams and torpedoes and stuff like that. It's a real neat place. You should go and visit it sometime. Dr. Stefan is here. He was a classmate, or not a classmate, a colleague of my husband's. And he was at one time the director of the laboratory. He was guiding my daughter and my granddaughter through the buildings, checking them out, getting ready for her to go to school there. And they were walking around and looking at things, looking at the water. And Dr. Stefan introduced my granddaughter to a couple of scientists from Egypt and China. And they jumped up out of playing in the water and says, "Oh, you're Dr. Schiebe, the Dr. Schiebe?" Allison was quite impressed to think that they were treating her daddy like a movie star. And he was a pretty good guy. The concept of Schiebe bodies, as Miss Iverson said, started out as a mathematical equation, turned into a physical, what's the word I want? Physical thing. And parts of it are still classified as government secrets, so it was an important bit of scientific learning. He used to say to me, words are important. Words like, what if, why, how come, I wonder. These words are not limited to scientific researchers. They can be used by any application in any profession. Your coach tomorrow might say, I wonder what would happen if we played Smith instead of Jones tomorrow at your football game. It might change the outcome of the game. The artist could say, I think blue would have been better. I wonder, should I have used blue? Your mom might say, why not go out for supper? They're all good words. They lead to good changes. I know that if Frank were making these remarks, he would have many good words for you, including praise for this school that has provided so many opportunities for him, acknowledgement of his associates in every phase of his life. He would thank everyone involved at this assembly, and as he did many times, and to the embarrassment of my children, he would state his pride in the original Schiebe bodies, his kids. Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry. I'm Frank's youngest brother, and Frank and I had many traits in common. First of all, we both became engineers, and we both struggled at the U. Frank fortunately had classmates like Dick Anderson to help him through, and I was even more lucky that I had Frank to help me through. And mostly he gave me encouragement when things were not going so well. And I had the opportunity, I don't know if it was the opportunity, if anybody ever rode in the car with Frank, you'd know what I mean. I went to the U for 4 years, and I traveled in and out with Frank because he worked down there at the laboratory with Heinz. It's good to see you, Heinz. And during that time, I got to know a lot more about Frank and what he was doing. And one of the things that he was involved in was cavitation, which has been explained a little bit. It's the formation of an explosion of bubbles on surfaces that are in water, caused by mechanical forces like a propeller blade. And his work became very important because the Navy was involved in, actually probably gave him many of his grants because the effect of these bubbles on surfaces like propeller blades and submarines and hydrofoils. So it was, I'm glad you brought up the story about Frank playing with bubbles because that's what he did. And he enjoyed it. But after graduation, I went to Ohio and then eventually California, and Frank went to Mississippi and then to Durant, Oklahoma. And so we were separated by a lot of miles and a lot of time. About 20 years or so went by, and I finally decided to call it quits in California and come back to Minnesota. And now I'm up in the North Woods in the middle of nowhere. But over the last 8-9 years before he died, I would take my mom down to Durant, Oklahoma in the winters. And so we stayed at their house because all the kids by that time had moved out. So there was lots of space. And I wouldn't say lots of space because Frank filled up space. Most of the time we ate in the living room because Frank had filled up the kitchen with his stuff. And the garage was full of stuff. And his favorite saying was when we couldn't find something, it was on the back bench, which was a disaster because it was usually 3 feet high with several projects intermingled. And but anyhow, it was fun time for me because I got to work with him a little bit and tinker around with different projects of his. And but I think my main job when I went down there was to clean out the garage. So Margaret could get the car in the garage. And I hope it's clean now, but no.
We're waiting for you.
Yeah. Thanks. But that was a good experience. But the thing that really impressed me during that time was when I was working with Frank, and you've mentioned it, and Dick Anderson mentioned it, is I did see his really gift of thinking outside the box, because we would be doing something and I would have no clue what to do next, and he would look at it and say, well, why don't you try that? And wow. So he did have a unique genius there, and I wish I had it. So, but Frank was unique, and I'm glad the high school gave him this award. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's John Bruer, and I am the junior class president of the student council here at Wayzata High School. And I'm going to read the proclamation for Dr. Frank Schiebe. Whereas Wayzata High School has initiated a Distinguished Alumni Award, and whereas recipients must have graduated a minimum of 20 years ago, and whereas recipients must have made a significant contribution to their profession, community, and or nation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Dr. Frank Schiebe has been named the Distinguished Alumnus of the year 2010 on this 23rd day of September 2010. We hereby proclaim that this is a day of special recognition for this individual whose achievements and contributions merit the respect and honor of the entire school and community. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Ms. Iverson has some closing remarks for us. So.
Right, thank you. I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I'm sure Frank's family appreciates seeing all of the friends and colleagues of Frank's back here today, and the students certainly are glad that you are all able to be here. I know, Margaret, you did come from Oklahoma, is that correct? Oh, Minnesota? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, today, but you did fly back here from Oklahoma, okay? So we are very thankful that you could make the trip, and this has been an honor and very fun for the kids as well to get to know your husband and your father, and we're glad you could be here. And I happen to grow up in the area, and so all my life I've heard of Schiebe's Corner, and now that I know why it's Schiebe's Corner, I think that's pretty cool too. So we are now going to have a reception, so we encourage all of the family and friends and guests to stay and enjoy. We will set out some food here. I apologize for the cheering and stuff you heard a little bit ago. We do have a Trojan Tot program. We have a class where students actually lead a nursery school for community children, and I think they were doing a cheer out there today. It's our homecoming week, so everyone's trying to get in the spirit. Also, today is 50s Day, which is fitting with the era that Frank graduated. I wish I could say that was planned. But you will see some characters straight out of Happy Days dressed today. So I just wanted you to understand that it's 50s Day, and the student council kids were either directed to dress up or dress with the theme. And so we have a little bit of both. But that's why you see the 50s dress in the audience. But again, thank you all for being here, and please join us for some treats up here at the front. Thank you.